Welcome to CBSN Boston's Women's History Month special. I'm Paula Eben.
And I'm Brianna Pitts. We have reached the end of March now, and all month long we've been highlighting the voices of women who are making a big impact across Massachusetts.
Whether it be through research, service, their entrepreneurial spirit, or their writing, we've enjoyed our conversations with these community leaders, and we hope you have too.
We want to begin with the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on women. It has been a really difficult last 12 months here in the U.S. and around the world. And while the pandemic has upended the lives of so many people, it has presented women with unique challenges, both personally and professionally.
And there's proof that women's health has suffered too. Dr. Malika Marshall explains what researchers have found.
Women who had serious health problems before COVID hit really did not go in to see the doctor. And so they're suffering the consequences of that even more than men with chronic conditions are. We also know that a lot of women, and more women than men, have skipped preventative services, regular checkups and screening appointments like mammograms and pap smears and colonoscopies. We know that women, according to a recent study, have been less able to get birth control than they could before the pandemic. And we know that more women than men say that the pandemic has really taken a toll on their mental health. We know that anxiety and depression are more prevalent among women than it is men, even at baseline. And so the effects of the pandemic have made that problem even worse.
There have also been concerns about the safety of the COVID vaccine for pregnant women. A new study out of Massachusetts finds the shots are safe, both for women who are pregnant and for those who are breastfeeding. The study was conducted by researchers from Mass General, Brigham and Women's, MIT, and Harvard. They found that women who received the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines had about the same number of antibodies as women who are not pregnant or breastfeeding. Researchers say those antibodies were also passed on to their newborns. The scientists also found no evidence of more intense side effects compared to the general population. Our Dr. Malika says ultimately a woman's decision to get vaccinated is a personal choice that should be made with their doctors.
Well, the pandemic has also put a lot of extra pressure on working women. Nearly 3 million have been forced to leave the workforce. Many of them were impacted by layoffs, while others voluntarily left to care for children who were home or loved ones who became sick. Economists are calling it a she-cession. Nora O'Donnell and the CBS Evening News have been exploring the pandemic's impact on women economically, socially, and physically. And Nora shared with us what she's learned.
A lot of experts who are looking very closely at this say that we have the lowest participation of women now in the workforce since the 1980s. That's 3 decades. So it's been a setback for women in the workforce, and it's one of the things that many people are looking at as we move past this, finally get people vaccinated, is what do we do about getting more women back into the workplace, and how do we support them? And then what are the long-term consequences for our economy and for women because this has taken such a heavy toll on women?
And Nora admitted that she, too, has been struggling as a working parent of 3 kids at home.
Well, as we navigate these unprecedented times, it is important to educate young people about what's going on in the world. Author Kate Messner is playing a crucial role in doing that with her most recent children's book. It's called Dr. Fauci: How a Boy from Brooklyn Became America's Doctor. It highlights Dr. Anthony Fauci's impressive career, which includes a degree from the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, but also portrays the female scientists who've made a difference for our country over the last year.
One of the things that we did when we were creating the book and when it was being illustrated by New Hampshire illustrator Alexandra Bai was try to make sure that lots of different scientists were represented in the art, because another thing Dr. Fauci made clear is that science is a team sport, and there was so much collaboration involved, especially in the early days of this COVID-19 pandemic. We had scientists from around the world collaborating to study this new virus and try to develop a vaccine. And that was people of all genders. And so the book portrays not only Dr. Fauci, but if you look carefully in those pages, you will find Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, who was part of the team that was really instrumental in developing the Moderna vaccine, one of the first mRNA vaccines. So many of other scientists appear in the pages as well. And I think for again, kids of any gender who want to be scientists, we have in the back of the book 5 tips from Dr. Fauci. And those really focus on following curiosity, on keeping an open mind, and in understanding that science is a process and there are going to be mistakes along the way, and we learn from those, and that's how we move forward. So I think that's relevant for girls during Women's History Month and for all of us.
The book, Dr. Fauci, How a Boy from Brooklyn Became America's Doctor, hits store shelves June 29th.
I have to say, even before the tender age of 12, my daughter has been the target of hurtful, racist comments and gender bias. And I can only hope that as she continues to grow up, that she never has to experience that again, and that she will have the opportunity to reach her full potential as a productive and happy human being.
You're watching CBSN Boston's Women's History Month special.
Ahead, meet the woman who designed the Woo Sox brand new stadium in Worcester. How Janet Marie Smith worked her way up to become the country's go-to ballpark architect.
And she is out of this world awesome. We'll introduce you to the astronaut who's breaking down barriers in space, plus so many more amazing women. Stay with us.
History made in Boston this month. Last week, Kim Janey became the first woman and first person of color to lead the city as mayor. Janey's a Roxbury native who grew up during the 1970s battle to desegregate Boston public schools. She will serve until November's mayoral election. Janey has not yet said if she plans to run.
Well, over the last decade, there has been a growing presence of women in politics, and I spoke with Cambridge Mayor Sumbul Siddiqui about what she believes is driving this shift.
For me personally, it's been seeing more women involved is inspiring, right? So we have so many more role models out there now, and that leads to other women saying, oh, that's someone I can relate to. That's someone who comes from my background that I haven't seen in an elected office before. So maybe I can do that too. So there has been definitely this role model effect. And also, it's very clear that when women are in office and are leading in office, there'll be issues that they will be legislating on that simply affect women much more. And I think that's also really powerful. So you hear, my Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley, talk about being close to policy making and having women lead on issues that they have the life experiences to lead on is really powerful. So I think, you're just seeing more opportunities, more organizations pop up that are supporting women. And it's been over a long decade of that work, really grassroots work, recruiting women to run, and then really all the support out there that is coming has been amazing.
We also sat down virtually with Framingham Mayor Yvonne Spicer. Not only is she the city's very first mayor, but also the first African-American woman elected mayor in Massachusetts history. As you listen to her share her view on women in politics, take notice of the photograph in the background. She's very proud of it. It features all of the country's African-American women mayors from a magazine photo shoot a few years ago.
I think there's room at the table for all of us. And I think it's also, it's a message to us as a state. Massachusetts is a pretty progressive state. And for me to become the first woman to be popularly elected by the people in 2017 and taking office in 2018, it says we have a lot of work to do and room to grow in our respective state and communities. It also gives me a sense of responsibility. So in the words of our vice president, I may be the first, but I don't want to be the last. Women have been leading things for centuries, but they've never been given the formal roles and the opportunities. And I think organizations, that have supported women, like Emily's List, Emerge, these are women giving women the confidence that they can run for office, that they have the ability, and also gathering the support of other women and men as well that they can do these jobs and they deserve a seat at the table. And you've seen that happen. And I think it started a few years ago, and the momentum has continued.
Well, this is something that Boston activist Monica Cannon-Grant says she is proud to celebrate this month, especially for women of color.
The role that Black women have played in elections across this country, I think, is super important. So I definitely plan to celebrate Women's History Month. All the women, the amazing women that have chosen to enter into politics. I don't think people give them enough credit for the courage it takes to run for office and put yourself out there.
Well, a senior at Salem State University is aiming to teach people about oppression through gaming. Her name's Torey Washington. She created a company called the Master's Tools. Her first game is called Meet the Colonizers. It aims to tell the stories that she feels history classes might not. It touches on topics like capitalism, race, class, and gender, and how they impact minority communities. She shared with us what she hopes players get out of it.
I hope for them to be fun and competitive and something that people can enjoy. One of the reasons I decided to do this is because sometimes these conversations are really hard to have. And I think that it's important to accommodate different people's learning styles and to bring these conversations outside the classroom. For a long time, we have seen the education system fails us in a lot of different ways, especially when it comes to conversations around race. And so I decided to make this a card game because my hope was that people can play this at home, and it isn't always something that's the education system's job to teach. And so I wanted it to be in the home, and I wanted it to be a game that people play and go like, I didn't know that, and encourage them to go self-educate, because I think that that's an important part that people miss. They think that sending someone to school, for 12 or more years is going to help them learn everything that they need to know. And most of the things that I have learned have come from real world experiences.
To learn more about the game or to get one for yourself, you can visit her website, themasterstools.com.
So if I could give my younger self some advice, it would be, don't worry so much about making mistakes, and definitely don't rein in your creativity because you're afraid of making mistakes. I think as you get older, you realize that in those moments when you mess up, that's where you learn and you grow and you don't worry about it too much. And it's also where we develop empathy, because we realize everyone's just doing his or her best. So I would say, take creative risks, don't worry so much about messing up, and when you do mess up, take a lesson from it, laugh at yourself, and move on.
At a time when so many people are struggling financially, the work of programs like Lovin' Spoonfuls is critically important. Ashley Stanley leads what she calls a food rescue organization. Lovin' Spoonfuls upcycles food waste for soup kitchens and shelters, after school and senior programs, and really anyone in need of a fresh, healthy food source. The nonprofit serves as many as 33,000 people every week. Ashley says when she started this whole thing back in 2010, she didn't have a clear idea of what shape it would take.
I don't know that I wanted to start a nonprofit right at the very beginning. What got me interested in it certainly was just curiosity. I'm aging myself now, but at the time, we know as women, especially when we're turning 30, we think about our lives, we think about the community around us, we think about the world around us, and something that I was hearing a lot of just because of the time of year, it was fall, sort of going into winter, which we know is charity season. Something that I was hearing a lot about was sort of funding the need. And it was in multiple spaces, right? Clothing drives, toy drives, certainly food drives. And it occurred to me that the messaging that I was hearing on repeat was the same messaging that I had really been hearing my whole life, and it hadn't changed much. And so for me, I was really sort of wondering, well, with all of the organizations out there, with all of the efforts out there, and certainly with all of the technology that we have now, have we really moved the needle on being able to serve the need and fund the need? And one of the ideas that really popped into my mind and ended up staying there was this idea that hunger is not a problem of supply, but it's a problem of distribution. And that's really what launched Lovin' Spoonfuls to what we are today.
So here's how Ashley says you can help most. Be conscious about your food footprint as she calls it, and make the most of the food you have. You can learn more at loveandspoonfillsinc.org.
The leaders of 3 women-owned businesses in our area came together this month to offer Treat Herself packages designed to empower women in their community. The packages included sweet and savory treats made by professional chefs and a fresh hand-tied floral bouquet. A portion of the proceeds support the Women's Lunch Place, which serves women in need. Sherry Hughes, the head chef there, tells us how helpful these donations have been.
We are a daytime shelter, and we help women in a lot of different ways. We have advocacy that helps them with housing and jobs. We feed them 2 meals a day, and it's a safe place for women to come and get warm and take a shower and do some laundry and have some fellowship with other women. We're closed right now, but we're getting ready to reopen. But we've continued to operate throughout the year.
Sherry, if I can follow up with you, what has the demand been like throughout the pandemic, and how is this collaboration helping?
The demand has been incredible. As you might imagine, the services are even more scarce once the pandemic hit and things started closing down. So our ladies, we feed them everything out the door. We have been giving them bags of food every day with breakfast and lunch and healthy food and healthy snacks and drinks. And our advocates go outside, and they've been meeting with them outside on park benches and out in front of the building that we are located in to continue to help them. And a lot of our ladies are just have struggled to navigate this whole pandemic, where they can go, where they can get help, where they can be safe. So we've been busier than ever, frankly.
Well, certainly so many good souls out there. And still ahead, women protecting women. We introduce you to the entrepreneur working to eliminate the fear of walking alone. Many women do fear for their safety when they're walking alone. A young entrepreneur from New Hampshire created a jewelry line that can subtly help women call for help. Invisawear smart jewelry sends an immediate SOS text to pre-selected emergency contacts or friends when the person wearing it presses a hidden button on the jewelry. It then continuously shares your GPS coordinates so that your loved ones can track you down. There's also a 911 feature that immediately notifies an ADT security agent who can dispatch police to your location.
Within a matter of seconds, usually an ADT agent is calling you. And because they have your live location on the screen, they're able to notify the dispatch center closest to you. And they're able to give them your continuous location, because sometimes, like you said, if you're in a ride share, you're moving, you're not stationary. And if you didn't have one of our devices, you'd have to continuously text your loved ones, okay, this is where we are, this is where we're headed, this is exactly where I am. And in these types of scary situations, you unfortunately don't have the time to do that. And you need to be discreet. You can't just have your phone out, because the attacker will take it from you. But nobody's going to suspect that, hey, I just pressed my necklace 2 times and now all of my loved ones know exactly where I am.
Well, one of Dorchester's most recognizable landmarks was painted by a woman. This is the gas tank along the Southeast Expressway, now owned by National Grid. The gas tank is a duplicate of the original. The Globe says that a nun turned graphic artist, Karita Kent, was hired by a Boston Gas executive to paint the original tank in 1971. When it was demolished in the 1990s, Kent's rainbow artwork was duplicated on the new tank and still lives on today.
Oh, what would I tell my younger self? Probably not to take life too seriously, and that mistakes are normal, and that how you get through those mistakes and those challenges is what makes you grow as a person. And I really hope that you take that advice too. What do you want to be when you grow up, Mallory?
A teacher.
I think you have all of the capabilities to become an amazing teacher.
The new home for the Woo Sox is just about ready to welcome its very first fans. Opening day is May 11th, and the new Polar Park came to fruition all because of Janet Marie Smith, an accomplished architect who's designed ballparks across the country, from Baltimore's Camden Yards to the redesign and expansion of Fenway Park and the building of the Sox spring training facility in Fort Myers, Florida. Janet Marie has been behind all of it. She even worked on Centennial Olympic Stadium in Atlanta for the 1996 Summer Olympics. Janet Marie shared with us how she got where she is today. And spoiler alert, it all started the old-fashioned way with a handwritten note to former Red Sox president and CEO Larry Lucchino.
I know these days people don't write letters, they write emails, but I just put together a letter and I did some research on what the project was and tried to school myself as best I could about what was missing from that and how I could fit in and how I could make a contribution, and probably just pestered them to death until they agreed to see me so that I wouldn't keep calling. I don't know. But I do think that is advice that I often give to people, not just women, but is to find a place in an organization where you bring something unique to it. I'm a big believer that you don't just recycle ideas. You sort of can move from field to field and bring something new to an industry by virtue of an experience in another industry.
The new Polar Park has a capacity of 9,508, a tribute to the 508 area code there. There's also a 22-foot-tall mini monster, but it wasn't intended to imitate the Green Monster at Fenway. It was actually done because there's a 30-foot drop from the street right behind it down to the field, so it is a retaining wall as well. And yes, there will be mini monster seats up on top. We can't wait to see Janet Marie's hard work on display when they play ball.
Well, you may have seen her in recent TV ads encouraging people across Massachusetts to get their coronavirus vaccine. Dr. Sherry Blowett at Brigham and Women's Hospital is like many of us. She spent the better part of last year juggling work and home life. Dr. Blowett specializes in sports medicine, but in her previous career, she was a champion Paralympic wheelchair racer. Sherry won the New York City Marathon twice, Boston Marathon twice, and the Los Angeles Marathon 4 times. Dr. Blowett reflected on her success and had this advice for women who are fighting for their place in the world.
You can plan so far ahead, but life takes us in so many unexpected directions and honestly opens doors at unexpected times and in unexpected ways. And I think that I've benefited from being very receptive to what the world is bringing and to walk through those doors whenever possible and to not limit where I think my ultimate potential may lie. And, I still to this day deal with that concept that so many women face about, imposter syndrome, right? And thinking, do I really belong here? Do I bring the same value to this professional context that I'm in? And I think it's just a really significant challenge, especially for women who are in the early or mid portions of their career. And I'd encourage everyone to just think about strategies for how you can honestly suppress that feeling of imposter syndrome and understand that you're there for a reason and you do bring value and that the sky's the limit if you conceptualize it in that way.
Well, the sky is quite literally the limit for astronaut Kate Rubins. She's currently 250 miles above Earth, traveling at 17,000 miles per hour on the International Space Station. Dr. Rubins has a unique background. She has a PhD from Stanford in cancer biology. And before joining NASA, Dr. Rubins completed a fellowship in Cambridge at MIT's the Whitehead Institute for Biomedical Research. Dr. Rubins first launched to the International Space Station in 2016 and became the first person to sequence DNA in space. Here are her words of wisdom for budding scientists.
My advice to young women that are interested in science and technology is to think about what they're interested in, figure out what grabs them, what do they like to do every day, and hold on to that. There's a lot of people out there that are going to say, hey, this is too hard, you shouldn't be doing this, maybe give you the feeling, not overtly, but give you the feeling subtly that you don't belong here. I've mostly just ignored that. I put my blinders on. I do what I love to do. I have always had jobs that I think are amazing, incredible, and I'm passionate about that. And so, put your blinders on, put your head down, and do what's fun, and do what drives you and what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about something, that's going to take you really far. It's gonna lead you to places you wouldn't even think, like the space station.
Well, Dr. Rubins is among the astronauts paving the way for the next mission to the moon in 2024. The specific team hasn't been chosen yet, but we applaud their groundbreaking work and commitment to excellence.
So impressive. Well, thank you for joining us for this special edition of CBSN Boston, celebrating some fabulous women in our communities.
And we leave you now with some advice that we would give to our younger selves.
Happy Women's History Month. If there was one thing that I had to tell my younger self, it would be don't compare yourself to other people. It's really easy to do because of social media, and you can see everyone's every move that they make and what they do and how well they're doing. So it's hard to not do it. But if you can focus on yourself and your dreams, your goals, what makes you happy, I think you can be a better version of yourself. You'll be happier and healthier at work and even in your own personal life. And another thing that I would say is to make sure that you uplift other women and support each other, because so often I feel like as women, we're constantly being evaluated and judged by the world, really, and we shouldn't do it to each other. And so if we can be more helpful, more supportive, go to each other, support each other, that would make the world a better place for women.
As we recognize Women's History Month, my advice to younger women is this: don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You are enough, just as you are, as long as you show up in the world as your most authentic self. Let your gifts out. Surround yourself with people who love and support you in your relationships and your work, and in turn, love and support others, and you will excel no matter what you decide to pursue.